Hi again. Ellul, Subversion of Christianity. This is part 6. Here Ellul is addressed in the previous segment the myth that's around us today, that somehow the Bible is characterized by myth, and therefore we've passed the age of myths and we don't need this mythology anymore, which point of view seems to be everywhere in the culture as a whole. This is Ellul's response to it. If revelation is intolerable, it is not because of its mythical or legendary dress. On the contrary, this is what risks constantly becoming more acceptable, but by changing its nature, taking it as the sacred, the supernatural, and as religion. The intolerable element is deeper than that. As the first point in our reply, we shall refer again to our earlier study of the process of desacralization that produces a resacralization of the very thing that brings about the desacralization. This gives us a clue, so that without repeating ourselves, we may simply say that this movement shows us that it is completely intolerable for us to live in a religiously deserted universe, in a desacralized world. We need a religion. We thus rush to the victorious conqueror of the Medusa that we worshipped yesterday, that is in pagan days. We refashion God's revelation as a religion with its own legends, myths, mysteries, ecstasies, and religiosity. I need not go into this again, and I could only imagine what Ellul would think of today when people rush from Christianity to cults and delusions of all kinds, even accepting that Islam is somehow superior to Christianity. Our ancestors, our grandparents would have revolved in their graves, and probably are. Ellul goes on, similarly, another aspect need not detain us long, for we have dealt with this too, to the preceding chapters. In essence, X, that is Christianity, authentic Christianity, when it comes to us, cannot be organized. We can have neither stability, routine, collective permanence, association, nor group cohesion if we want to live by revelation. If we put X at the center of as the sole truth, it cannot be lived out socially. When we are told that the Holy Spirit constituted the church at Pentecost, we like that. But when we learn that the Holy Spirit is like the wind, that blows when and where it wills, and we do not know where it comes from, nor where it is going, we do not like it. The church may say that it has the Holy Spirit, but if it does, it betrays its truth and legitimacy. When we are told that the church consists of those whom God calls, we applaud. But who are they? Who can trace the boundaries? We may say that the church has a center, Jesus Christ, but it has no circumference. We can give assurance to none and exclude none. We may believe that we have found a solution in baptism. Church members are baptized, and the baptized are the church. Well and good. But unfortunately, the New Testament very clearly distinguishes between the baptism of water and the baptism of the Spirit. The two do not coincide, except when the church falsely decides that they do. We are thus back in the same difficulty. When we are told that the church has ministers and its life is organized around them, well and good. But at once we have to remember that these ministries are a gift of the Holy Spirit, and not a permanent or organized thing. This leads us to invert the biblical movement. We set up pastoral positions or benefices with rectors and bishops, etc. We then fill these posts with people we think are suitable. But this is the opposite of the movement presented in the epistles, in which the Holy Spirit gives to the church people who have the gifts of love or the word or teaching, and the church has to find a place for them, even if it had not anticipated doing so. If, after a while, the Holy Spirit does not give someone who has the spirit of prophecy, but gives someone who has the gift of miracles, then the church must change its form and habits. No doubt some will reply that God is not a God of disorder, incoherence, or arbitrariness, but a God of order. Of course he is. Unfortunately, the whole of the Old Testament shows us that God's order is not that which we conceive and desire. God's order is not organization and institution. That is, look at the difference between judges and kings in the Old Testament. It is not the same in every time and place. It is not a matter of repetition and habit. On the contrary, it resides in the fact that it constantly posits something new, a new beginning. Our God is a God of beginnings. There is in him no redundance or circularity. Thus, if his church wants to be faithful to his revelation, it will be completely mobile, fluid, renaissant, bubbling, creative, inventive, adventurous, and imaginative. It will never be perennial and can never be organized or institutionalized. If the gates of death are not going to prevail against it, that is not because it is good, solid, well-organized, a fortress as it were, but because it is alive. It is life. That is a mobile, changing, and surprising life. If it becomes a powerful, fortified organization, on the other hand, it is because death has prevailed. Thus, even on the humble level of the church, revelation cannot be organized or experienced socially. How much less so when Christians suddenly find themselves in charge of society. Going back to what happened in the days of Constantine, of course. We will put a link in to something we learned about this the hard way through our experience in Jehovah's Witnesses. That is, what we learn from Genesis is God's dealing with men, the creation of an organization or an organism. Next time.